Flosstube. It's Arlene here. It's Thursday, December 30th, 2021. Almost the end of the year. I hope you all have been well, have been hanging in there, have been enjoying the season as you can. We are in that time period between, this last week of the year when sometimes you don't even know what day of the week it is. You might have a plan for the day and you end up not following the plan, and it all feels really good to just have that time period where, especially, I'm making an assumption here. Not everyone has days off from work. Not everyone has that place in their mind, but I know I am one of the lucky ones that I'm in that space right now, having some time off from my teaching life, and have been very much sticking in my stitching life. All right, my chair squeaking. We're just going to have to deal with this, people. I have so appreciated this time where I've really been able to focus on a lot of stitching things, designing related things, and I wanted to make sure I did an end of the year Flosstube. So thank you all for coming, visiting with me here. As I've said before, I know there are so many choices of floss tubes to visit, so if you are here, thank you. And you know the drill, the like, subscribes, and comments always help and are very much appreciated. So a lot of my stitching, was it 3 weeks ago that I meant to check. I did a video not that long ago, and whatever I shared in that video, I know that I started talking a little bit about the fact that my stitching in the last period of time has been very much planning for the Nashville Needlework Market. If you're new here, I'm a designer. I design under Works by ABC. My initials are ABC. And I am planning for my first official year as an exhibitor at Nashville this coming March. I went as a visitor in 2020, literally like a week before the world shut down. And that was so helpful to be there, to observe, to talk to folks, especially those who, were just 1 or 2 years into being exhibitors themselves. I feel like there's no way I could be comfortable doing Nashville had I not had that experience. I was signed up to be in 2021, didn't happen. We're going to hope and cross our fingers that things can go forward at the beginning of March for 2022. So my plan is to have 5 new releases for Nashville. I just the other night started stitching on my 5th one. There is currently, like right out a screenshot, a lot of FFOing going on for some of the others. I realize as perhaps many of you, I often default to framing when it comes to finishing. Certainly my designs, not 100% of them, but many of them are just framed. I realized that of my 5, there is going to be at least 3 different types of finishing, one of them being framing, for my, which I think is just a nice variety. And depending on what I decide for the one I'm currently stitching, there might even be 4 different ways. Which is just great. One of the things, if you are familiar with my style, my interest, stitching my own designs or otherwise, is I like variety. And so even when it comes to finishing, which I had not even really thought about too much before, variety can be a good thing. So because of wanting to keep my new designs under wraps until they are ready to be released and shared, and hopefully drum up some excitement for Nashville, I don't have a whole lot of current stitching to show. I have an exception to that. If you've seen this on Instagram, you might have seen this on Instagram if you follow me. A few weeks back, an Instagram ad came across my way that I was really intrigued about, and it is a woman on Etsy. The name of her store is The Tiny Stitch. I will link it below. And while she does some other things, a vast majority, I don't know, majority, half, if not, I don't know. A number of her designs are taking famous works of art and making them small. And when I say small, I'm talking 30, 40 stitches. So of course you lose a lot of detail, but when you go to her website and you start scrolling through, and if you have some familiarity with works of art, particularly what do I say particularly? I say particularly the ones that I'm familiar with, which is not a good example. Certain artists, a lot of the impressionists, a lot of from a certain time period, um, I was able to recognize many of her designs again without those kinds of details, and I was just so intrigued. I She has different ways to purchase. The designs are a couple of bucks each or so, but she had this ebook option that has 50 of her designs, and I want to say it was like $11, $12. And as I scrolled through, as I was just getting excited about this idea, I scrolled through and I'm like, you know what, this is worth it. And so I purchased that ebook of hers. Now, what really got me excited was not just the idea of famous works of art small, but to go crazy with it and to stitch those, like I said, 30 by 40 inches pieces on silk gauze. So making them super tiny. Now, they're regular charts. You do not have to stitch as small as as I did here. You could go with 14 count Aida. You could go with like 7 count plastic canvas if you want. But to me, there's this intriguing idea with it. And I have even smaller, like higher counts of silk gauze. Like I went with 40 count partially because her charts are they're charted in DMC, nice, easy accessibility. You go too small, pretty much a higher count than 40 count, one strand of DMC gets really hard to get through those holes of silk gauze. If you have not stitched on silk gauze before, well, I'm going to show you in a second what it looks like. Um, I can really only get 10 stitches in, so like half of a cross stitch. And I will say this though, I stitched on this, and as I was stitching and for a couple of other reasons, I ended up counting, and this piece that I thought was a 40 count really more like a 45 or a 46 count. So it's actually a little bit smaller. So for my first one that I was like, I got to check this out. I got to see if I'm interested in doing this. I went with Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. And here is, okay, so can I get, how close can I get and still be in focus? Can you guys see it there? So if you're familiar with Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, I'm hoping you could look at this and say, that's got enough detail for me to see what that is. If you've never stitched on silk gauze before, it is expensive, but not ridiculously so, but it is the kind of material that you don't necessarily want or need to leave yourself like a 2-3 inch margin around what you're doing. And so what you often do with silk gauze is take a small piece and stitch it to some fabric or something such that you could then put the fabric in, I was just using a hoop, okay? And so you could just see my, quickie stitches here, stitch it on and then carefully cut out the cotton fabric from the top so you can then stitch. I have this idea of creating this little miniature museum. I meant to bring this up. Sorry. The first silk gauze piece that I stitched is a tiny little sampler, and not as this small, but small. And I actually had finished it this was years ago. If I was purposely looking or by chance, there was a dollhouse store, or there was some store that sold a lot of dollhouse things, and I found a picture frame for a dollhouse that it fit pretty well. I think I just ended up stitching a couple of rounds around the edge just to kind of fill in the space. So I started brief Googling of dollhouse websites that sell picture frames. There are a number out there. Most of them that I was finding would not go this small. I didn't look in detail. I need to look more. If any of you are dollhouse enthusiasts, experts, and can help me, guide me, awesome. Because the smallest frames that I was finding, remember the numbers, but we're definitely a little bit bigger than this. And again, I could just attach it as, you could see that silk gauze is like kind of see-through. And it could kind of like float in the center, or I don't know, I could stitch some color, like either black or white or gray or something all the way around, almost like if it was a mat on a frame. We'll see. We'll see if I ever do that. But it was a quick stitch for me. I don't do too many quick stitches, so it was kind of fun and different. So fun and different is always a good thing. I shouldn't say always, is often a good thing. So, like I said, I had purchased the ebook because I saw enough of them in there that, assuming I liked one of them, there would be others. And I'm going to show you those in a minute. Uh, because all of my, like I said, this is a little project that got snuck in between some of the main cross stitching that I've been doing. I know a lot of videos that floss tubers are putting out like this week or around this time of year. There's a lot that fall under three categories. Now, some people are just putting out their every 2 week, every month, every week, no, quote, normal video. But there's a lot of people who are doing year wrap-ups, all the things I stitched this year. There's people that are doing whip parades. Here's all the things I'm entering 2022 with already started. And some people are doing, here are my stitching plans for 2022. And well, the first category, I was thinking about actually doing at least everything that I could show you. And I realized much of my stitching this year, the last couple of years, has been my models for my designs. And right now, most of certainly the current ones are at a trunk show. So I physically do not have them in my possession to do any kind of yearly or worthwhile yearly kind of finish wrap up. Whip parade, that's just not my thing. I really don't stitch on more than one piece at a time. Now, let's be clear. I had my main cross stitch, I'm pointing because I'm pointing downstairs where I stitch nightly, one of my designs that I was working on. And yes, for a few afternoons or evenings or weekend, whatever it was, I was working on this. So technically, did I have 2 works in progress during those days? Sure. But in the way that many floss tubers talk about whips, it's just not the way I stitch. But thinking about what I might be stitching in 2022, I was like, I would actually like to share that with some folks. And hopefully some of you are interested in what I'm about to share. So the cross stitching, I'm going to go put this out there. Any cross stitching that I do, 98% of the cross stitching that I'm doing these days, these last few years, are my own designs that I'm stitching, and most of the time I have not been sharing until I was ready to release them as a pattern that people can purchase. There's a few exceptions to that. But if you've followed me on Flosstube, on Instagram over these past few years, you will see that I really like to do lots of different kinds of stitching. I was just briefly looking, I know at this point last year I was working on a Hardanger piece, and within this past year it was a needle painting piece. So like I said, right now I started working on the 5th of my 5 releases, cross-stitch releases for Nashville. I also have 2 smalls that I need to stitch next up. One of them being, let me just share with you this, my ornament contribution for the 2022 Just Cross Stitch ornament issue. If you never knew this, like literally those ornaments are due, I think it's like February 1st. Like that's how far ahead they work. And I mean, I had to submit my proposal like beginning of December to be accepted that yes, we would love your design in the magazine this year. If you have heard this, or let me update you if you have not heard updates. If you hadn't heard for years, the ornament issue of Just Cross Stitch, their business decision was not to pay designers for that issue. You will get paid for other patterns and other issues. They had their reasoning, it's a contribution that we're all giving to the community. They have their wording for it. I know many designers, especially over the years, have basically said, our work has got worth and value to it, and I am not going to contribute to something where I am not being paid, as certainly makes sense. There's other folks that have understood the spirit, the wording that Just Cross Stitch put out there. There are people like me as a new designer, especially that first year. I was happy for any publicity that I could get. I know, again, this is an issue that some designers really were bothered about. This is an issue that some stitchers who had no idea once they learned that designers were not getting paid um, were very unhappy. I am pleased, if you have not already heard this, I am pleased to share that Just Cross Stitch has changed their policy. And starting with the 2022 issue, they are paying designers for their designs. And I just think that's a great thing. I just want to make sure people know that out there, because it's an important step, an important recognition of our industry. And so just sharing. So that ornament and one other small needs to be done. But then I was thinking, I would like to take a little break from my cross stitch world and do some other things. That I have this running list of things that I want to do. So let me start by saying this silk gauze piece, which like I said is a tent stitch, is not so different from doing cross stitch. I mean, you're using a pattern, a chart that, again, could be used with any fabric, literally almost any thread. So it doesn't quite deserve its own category, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in its own category. So again, there were plenty in that ebook that I wanted to do, and I picked out a few that are likely to be the next contenders when and if I decide to do my next one. Loving the whole idea of 40 count silk gauze, so we'll probably continue that. So this one is Monet's Sunflowers. Van Gogh also has a sunflower piece. There's reasons why I like this one, especially because it brings in red, whereas Van Gogh's stays much more in the, I think the table is yellow. I also have this idea that, at least until if and when I do a few of them, don't repeat artists, do different ones. So don't do Van Gogh's Sunflowers because you just did Van Gogh's Starry Night. It's just a thought. So Monet's Sunflowers is a possibility. The Great Wave, Hokusai, I forget how to pronounce this, but again, especially if we look at it from a distance, I would imagine it looks familiar to a number of folks. Katsushika Hokusai. I didn't print out. Well, just to give you a sense, so on 14 count, you could see it's 2 inches by 2.5 or so. So again, that's on 14 count. 20 count is 1.4 by 1.85, and so if I'm working on 40 count, it's half of that, which would be 0.7, which is 3/4 of an inch by less than an inch, which is about what that Van Gogh worked out to, the Starry Night worked out to me. This one, the Matisse, it's Icarus by Matisse. I don't know how seriously I will stitch it because I think the blue will get boring. It's a piece that has meaning and memory to me, and that's why it got put on my list, is for the meaning behind the piece. Memories, we'll see. And then, despite the fact I said no repeating of artists, at least initially, I did feel the need to consider this one. So this is another Monet. Now, when I was first going through that book to plan out my next potentials, I did initially eliminate any that were going to involve backstitching. The ones that involve backstitching, it is not much backstitching at all, and they are only places where it's really, truly needed. For example, if you look at the umbrella, especially, where am I? The pole for the umbrella. You need something there. And if you're working at this small of a scale, you really can't afford a row of stitches for that. So because I was doing this on 40 count silk gauze with 1 strand of DMC, I can't use 1 strand of DMC for backstitch. And so I initially said I have to eliminate that possibility. So this one, I think, was the last one. I think they're alphabetical, so W. And I just paused because this has always been a piece that I've liked. Backstitching. And then I realized, Arlene, I have a lot of threads, not so many colors, but I have a lot of threads that are finer than 1 strand of DMC, mostly through my bobbin lace world. And whatever color this is actually charted in, I mean, I'm not going to have like that green for the umbrella, but maybe I do, but I could play around with threads that are finer than one-stranded DMC and make it work. So there we go. So one of these will become my next silk gauze piece, and when I start that, I don't know, but it will be something that I will share with you. Okay. Next thing that is on the potential list for stitching in 2022, aside when I need the break from cross stitching, last winter, spring, at some point, I shared with you this needle painting piece. It is by Trish Burr. The design is Trish Burr. Her books are fantastic for not getting freaked out by doing needle painting. The one time I had taken a class on this, I remember so clearly the instructor was more or less saying, okay, take a look what you have there. You have some cotton fabric that I bought at Joann's, for a few bucks a yard. You have some DMC thread. Don't feel like you're going to mess it all up, because if you actually feel like you've messed it all up, you got some cheap fabric and some cheap thread, you could do it again. And it was so appreciating, like that kind of thinking. Are there fancier fabrics that you could be using? Sure. But when you're first learning something, you don't need to get the most expensive products, for the most part, while you're testing it out to see if it's something you like. So I know on the video when I had finished this, I had held up, pretty sure it was this book, and I had shared 3 possible next ones. Now, the bookmarks are still in here without me going back to check that video. I'm believing the 3 that I held up was the French Rose, the Camellia, and a Crocus. And I know in that video I'd said, put in the comments what what would be your vote for what I do next. I know at one point I was looking at those comments and tabulating. I don't remember, but I will take another look when and if I start a new needle painting project in 2022. So next thing on my list as a potential is something I have actually not done before, but I've had this in my possession a really long time. I love to do counted canvas work. One of those is coming up in a minute. I have never done painted canvas. Now, I'm not sure when and how I was introduced to the idea. It might have been, years ago when I was following a lot of blogs. I couldn't tell you how, but I became aware of this painted canvas world. And in all honesty, one of the big things that stuck out to me is how expensive it is. Now, is it worth the money? Often, because you have somebody who is hand painting. You can get printed versions that are cheaper, but if you're going top of the line, you're getting someone who has hand painted each stitch intersection. And that takes a long time, and I believe in paying people for their work. But because of that, it really wasn't in my budget. It's not my typical stitching budget at all. I'm still on, I believe, a Facebook group called Needlepoint Nation. It is huge. I haven't been on it in a very long time, but there was a piece that was the top header. I don't know if it was there permanently or was one of the ones they rotated, that just got to me. And for some sort of special occasion, which I don't remember, I decided, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. So I purchased this. Ooh, we need paper. You see, I purchased this painted canvas. And actually, you could see it's about the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. I looked this up. I meant to double check, but it's a Gandhi quote. And there's something about it. And because I'd never done this before, and I'd learned a lot by reading mostly some blogs, but mostly on that Facebook group, that some people sort of choose their own thing. Some people just do it all in 10 stitch. Some people do elaborate stitches, but there are also something called stitch guides, which you could say is like a pattern that somebody has said, hey, somebody with experience has said, hey, here's some stitches, here's some thread that's going to work nicely in that pattern. So I had actually purchased the stitch guide by Robin King, The designer is Sandra Gilmore of that pattern, that canvas. And the Stitch Guide by Robin King, she is just one of the people out there that does this kind of work, well known. And again, I'm assuming she's still around. And the threads, including some beads that she had suggested in her Stitch Guide. And I just haven't done this. It's just sat, and I keep it flat because I didn't want to roll it, which you could. And it's just something that got put on my little list some time ago, actually when I was moving and I was kind of making lots of lists. And I think 2022 might be the time I need to get it done. Again, I have stretcher bars. I have the threads. I have a pattern where might I make my own decisions and changing it? Sure, but in general, I've got something to work from. So we shall see. It would certainly be doing something different for me, and I like the opportunity to try something different. Okay, so silk gauze, needle painting, painted canvas. Next one that is very appealing to me is Hardanger. The piece that I did, I think I noticed this because of an Instagram post or something. So this was the Hardanger piece that I did last winter. Oh, the designer's name is Carol Olson. I forget whether she has a company name. But it got me back into a Hardanger piece, and it was one that I thought was particularly beautiful. Not that long after I finished it, I came across maybe a post, maybe someone was working on this, I don't know, this one. And Inspirations magazine, which comes out of Australia, is a beautiful magazine. A couple times I've subscribed to it. I'm not a digital magazine person. Like, I know myself. I need to see it on paper and flip through it. Anyway, I have some issues in person. They do some of their projects you can purchase as standalone. And when I went on the website, and I think someone had posted like in a Hardanger group that I saw, and I'm like, wow, there's something about that one that really appeals to me. And then when I learned it was something I could purchase the pattern for as a standalone, purchase it, a PDF, print it out, have it ready to go. So this one is definitely a possibility for my next Hardanger piece, whenever that might happen. However, in the back of my mind, I've had another Hardanger piece waiting in the wings for years. Depending on how long you've been around and what your interests are in needlework world, I'm going to use the past tense, was an amazing company store called Nordic Needle. I would need to double check exactly what its status is now. It was started and run for decades. Two women named Roz and Sue. Their focus was Hardanger. When they started in the 70s, it became a huge store, a distributor of all kinds of places. They ran yearly retreats. It was huge. They put out paper catalogs, and I'm talking about significantly sized paper catalogs once or twice a year, well past the time that lots of places were putting out paper catalogs. I was fortunate enough, I would read their blog or newsletter. I think they sent like a weekly newsletter. And for a number of years would read about their yearly retreat. It was all classes. Yes, they use the word retreat. And there was one year, and I'm lucky I did this at the time, where I was just like, I want to do this. And as a teacher, it is not at all easy for me to do something personal, like take a few days off. Yeah, what time of year was it? April? I am so glad I had that opportunity to do it, and I loved it. When there, it was held like at a hotel, but it was a mile or two away from the store. To go to the store is a huge store, and the whole basement area was their distribution center. Because of that catalog, they were very well known for, mail orders, and then obviously evolved to online orders. And I remember being at the store and they were giving tours of their operation, just how it all works. And it was just so fascinating to me how it all worked. By the point I went, and I'm going to say it was 2013-ish time, Sue, again, those two women had retired. Roz was still the leader of the business. A few years ago, when Roz wanted to retire, I believe the story is she sold the business to some of her employees. And I know that they closed, I believe, they closed the physical store soon after that. I believe they were keeping up the online business. I do not know what the status is now. I hadn't even checked. Boy, am I taking a long time to explain this. So, Roz, you will still see, I know I've seen her contribute to the Just Cross Stitch ornament issue. So she does, in her retirement, a little bit of designing, we could say. One thing they did for many years, and again, I was reading their weekly or bi-weekly newsletters, so I learned a lot about them, is every year they had a Hardanger contest, because Hardanger was their original core. They did all kinds of stuff beyond that. Every year they had a contest, and the winners would get published in a publication. And I'd done some Hardanger, I don't know. The catalog really drew me in, and I often purchase some things from that catalog. Again, a paper catalog, even to the point where they definitely had everything online, and more online than they could put in the paper catalog. But I remember seeing this is 2011, geez, 10 years ago, the award-winning designs in Hardanger from 2011. And there was something about this one. I'm like, what's going on there? I mean, Hardanger, there's a lot of variety, and there's some amazing creativity that can go on with it. But there was something about this that looked odd. And I know I saw this like in the paper catalog, and I know I went online to see if I could get a better view of what was visually so different about this one. Well, what is visually so different? And actually, let me show it to you here. Is that, well, number one, it's like almost all of the fabric has been cut away. Like you see fabric here, you see fabric there. Even the ones that have a lot cut away, you still see fabric. This one had almost, you do all the stitching and then almost all of it got cut away. The areas like this are dove's eyes. Close enough for you to see. I don't know if you could see. Oh wait, there's another one here. They show it close up like this. So that's what made it visually so different and intriguing to me. And they say very clearly, I feel like I've picked up one or two others of these by chance, by retreat freebie tables, or I feel like at a used book sale. I feel like I have a few other years of this. And they say very clearly, this is not a beginner book. They do not give instructions. If you know what to do with Hardanger, seeing a finish like this and seeing basically 1/4 of it, you know what to do. So a nice, good picture is basically what they give you. So I remember getting so excited about this. I ordered fabric and thread, which I still have in the same place where this pattern is. And when I went to take this out, just because I knew in addition to this Hardanger, I had this other one, I admit now I'm like, I really want to get started on that. Because it's so different. It is very large. Without double checking, I'm pretty sure the fabric that I had in the bag with this was the called for, or what the woman who designed it used, which was a 32 count. And the finished size, 24 inches round, like diameter. So it's a big one. We'll see. I'll keep you updated in what I end up stitching and so on. Again, the balance in needlework is so important for me. I've been doing almost entirely cross stitch since the summer, if not earlier than that. And again, I love cross stitch. I just also love some variety. Now, after all that with Hardanger, I was going to end with the fifth, so silk gauze, needle painting, painted canvas, Hardanger. I was going to end with the one that I really think is going to be the first one I will start when I'm ready to do something different, and that is a counted canvas work piece. So I've shown these before, these two designs. So it's on an 18 count canvas. This one has a sparkly metallic through it. These designs are from threedles. I think you pronounce it threedles. Think of the word needle and just threedles. Curdy Bakes. I sometimes just say they're Curdy's designs. She does these very intricate, a huge variety of stitches, of threads, and of colors. And I've always been intrigued by them. It took seeing a trunk show, Needleworker's Delight, I want to say a few years ago, seeing them in person for me to really appreciate what was going on. What was getting to me is that it was too much variety. So different stitches, different threads, different colors. It was too much for me. Clearly, plenty of people love her designs. So I said to myself, well, what happens if you eliminate one of those three? So different stitches, different threads, but basically a monochrome design. And this is what I came up with. I eliminated a few. Oh wait, I even took these out for you guys. Yes, this is how. So this one's Cathedral. Yeah. So you could see, and she provides different colorways. This is just the one that's on the front cover. So you can see how the eliminating the variety of color really changes a piece. So I loved this. I loved what I did. And at some point later on, I'm like, I want to do that again. So I picked up, now let me check this out. It's still in this, okay, this one, which is called A Different View. And again, lots of colors, threads, and stitches. I eliminated the color piece. And here we go. And I'm looking through the fabric here. Did with red and gold. So the golds, including the beads, are basically are the same ones. I used my same supplies as the blue one, and just brought in red. I wasn't using the same threads in the same locations that she was. Well, again, I took this stuff out for you guys. So here's my leftovers of the red piece. And so, and granted, I had learned a lot from the blue piece, because the blue piece, I went crazy and bought a ton of threads, and many of them were never used or were tested and not used. But for the red piece, I've got some Very Velvet, silk lame braid. What do I have here? Treasure braid. I've got panache, which is a very shiny, I was going to say rayon. I've got Splendor, which is a silk. Fireworks, which is a very shiny metallic. So this is, what's this one? Oh, a smaller size of silk lame braid. So you could see these are all Rainbow Gallery threads. It's not that I'm limiting myself to those. It's just that Rainbow Gallery really provides the variety that I liked. So my idea, my plan is, this is the next one. I don't know if I'll do the corner thing. I might just do the octagon. Need to see how it goes. And my plan is emerald green this time. So I know at one point I was like 3 is the perfect number. I'm going to get 3, and then I'm going to get them all framed in a similar way and have a display. And then I started thinking about royal purple, like a good purple. And I was like, but this is red and blue, and I need a green to, I'm like, well, I could do 4 of them. In going on her website, many of her designs are smaller. So these 2 that I just showed you are 10 inches by 10 inches, or at least as it's listed on 18 count. This one is listed as 11 by 11, so it's a little bit bigger. I went through and found 2, possibly 3 others that are basically around the same size. Again, a lot of hers are now like 6 or 8 inches. So a 4th one might be possible down the line. We'll see. So there you go. 5 different styles of stitching that may be part of my stitching world in 2022. I know there's going to be cross stitch, because I know I'll have new designs even after Nashville's over. There'll be new ones to plan for and new exciting things to try out. And all of these are not my own designs. These are others, but just the way many stitchers stitch cross stitch patterns. That's what's going on here. So I will keep you all posted in terms of what I end up doing first or whichever. And you can follow. Hold on. Weird computer things happening there. Um, Instagram, follow me there. I'm on Instagram much more often than I'm on Flosstube, or make a Flosstube video. So, if you're still with me, thank you so much for sitting through my sharing of needlework. I hope you've been doing well in this holiday season. And I know the holiday season is hard for some folks. And if that's your case, I hope there's some peace involved. We are all looking forward to a better 2022. And I'll see you there. Thanks so much. Bye.